Welcome back to another episode of the Scout Life. First off, thanks so much for watching these lame videos. And hopefully you've been enjoying the Gold 1210. I certainly have. It's a cool project. Still waiting to finish episode 3 on that, and then launch into the 4-wheel drive conversion. As usual, it's a busy day here on the streets. Don't be surprised if we hear lots of noises, but the new mic is helping. We're going to install a Pertronix ignition on the green 1210. So I thought I'd just walk it through and do a short video on it. There's a couple tips and tricks on it. It's not too hard. But first, the first question is, do I like the Pertronix? Yes. It is a great, simple update and upgrade for especially points equipped Scouts, from whether an 80, 800, Scout 2, these pickup trucks. Really like them for the Holley or IH point style distributors. 76 to 77 gold box, I would still do a Pertronix if you had problems. And like the problems with the gold boxes is if you have an intermittent stalling issue, like where you're just clipping along and all of a sudden the truck just dies, but then you let it sit for 10, 15 minutes and it magically starts back up. That's typically the gold box is bad. You can replace the module. That's what I would tend to do, but my favorite distributor ignition setup is the Presto Light from 78 to 80. I think that's a better unit than the Pertronix, just from a sheer reliability and good spark. But these are great. One quick tip is, from my experience, these do not like to be in the key on position while the engine's not running. So if your accessory position's not right, or you're trying to listen to the radio and you turn it to the ignition position or the run position, these can burn out. So be careful of that. But otherwise, super easy. And let's get going. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so some of the tools and equipment, very straightforward. Wire cutters, flathead, Phillips, a lighter, that's for shrink tubing, wire strippers. You will need a ring terminal. I don't like the horseshoe ones. Those can break, so use a ring terminal. I prefer the ones without insulation, and you can use I just got these at O'Reilly's. Okay, let me walk you through this. A couple key things as we start. So first off, as you look on the coil, this is the original point style coil that will work with the Pertronix. A point system operates off of a resisted voltage. So you'll see, let me show you. For now, don't pay attention to the red wire. But you see these two wires here. There's like one that has it almost looks like a braided kind of sheath. That is your ignition wire that comes from the ignition switch, but it is resisted. So I'll show you what that looks like. And then this green one actually comes from the starter. There's a bottom terminal on the starter that gives it a full 12-volt boost while you're in the crank position. So those wires are not, the 12-volt boost wire is fine for the Pertronix. You want that. But this resisted wire will not work. You need a full 12 volts, and that's where these red wires come in. It's power wire. It's not necessarily the way I'd love to do it, but it is totally acceptable. Again, this was a wire that was powering up the choke. We ran it from the ignition switch through a grommet in the firewall up here. And typically, you wouldn't want to use this. Like, a lot of people power up the coil, the positive side of the coil, and then charge their choke with that. I don't like doing that. I know this is doing the same thing, but it's going to the choke first, pretty large gauge wire, and then it's bringing 12 volts to the Pertronix, to the positive side of the coil. So the big thing for you is to make sure that you have a full 12 volts ignition power, not 5 volts, not 6 volts. So that typically means on a pre-76, so 71 to 75, you have to run an additional wire and get rid of that resisted wire. All right, so my battery died in my microphone, so I apologize. A couple very important things about the Pertronix is make sure you, if you notice this has like been degreased right here, because I wanted to make sure. I've burned out Pertronix units by hooking them up to the wrong terminal on the coil, just not paying attention. So it's very important to get the polarity correct. So now that we have that settled, use our flat tip screwdriver. And again, you guys, like, this is pretty easy. This radiator hose makes it a little bit of a hassle. Good time to check the condition of the cap. You're gonna reuse the rotor. Put that on my old air cleaner. So here we have the points. They're pretty dirty. Let me go find like a bungee or something to hold this cap out of the way so we can see. Okay, so the points, we're just trying to take the points off. Oh, careful. Ooh, magnetized tip screwdriver, helpful. And at this point, you don't really need to worry too much about like the adjustment of the points, because we're gonna change all that with the Pertronix, so. Sorry. Okay. So that's the main points unit is loose. I'm gonna take the little condenser out too. I do recommend always, not that I do it, but read the instructions. And if you look, it says remove the condenser. And if there's a ground wire, then reuse the ground, keep the ground wire. So there's a ground wire there. So we'll make sure to install that back. But as far as the points, we now have it all off and loose with the condenser. I'll save these because they do work. And I think I'm just gonna cut this black wire because we don't use it and I don't feel like unbolting that. So, and as you can see, it's been repaired. Goes to the negative side of the coil. So we'll unbolt that from the coil right there. Okay, I've got the negative post off there. Now there's no wiring and we just have our little ground wire that we'll retain. And now we just got to clean this surface so that we have a nice flat mounting surface. And there's like just some dust bunnies and other things in there. But now it's a good opportunity to also check your vacuum advance. I think I have checked it, but this little arm right there is the vacuum advance. And if you suck on this hose, that's the easiest way to actuate it. You'll see that the lever goes boop, 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 pulls in and out. Then the mechanical advance is underneath this plate, and normally, yeah, maybe it'd be a good idea, but you got to kind of take it more apart. So, yeah, we'll leave that. All right, I'm gonna show you something else that's kind of a annoying thing. So the Pertronix comes with these terminals on it. Now I understand they maybe make this for more than one application or something, but those ring terminals right there do not fit through the hole that's right there. So that's why I said you need ring terminals. So we're gonna cut those off and then pull them through the hole and then put our own ring terminals on it. Got that cleaned up, and I just sprayed some brake clean on a rag. I didn't spray the brake clean directly into the distributor because I didn't want to wash the dust bunnies and little things down into the, you know, mechanical guts of the distributor. So now we can take this piece, we're gonna cut those ring terminals off, and then I'll feed it through and we'll show how to mount that down. Another little tip, the Pertronix comes with these screws, brand new screws in the bag, right there. But I'm gonna reuse the original screws because they're shorter and I get nervous with long screws going through that plate. UPS is here. Woo. Okay, so we got the original screws. Magnetic tip screwdriver is helpful. I'm not gonna tighten this because this still has to be adjusted. Like this moves to set your air gap. So we're not gonna tighten that just yet. I'm gonna get these wires run through before we do that. So yeah, then we're gonna take these wires freshly clipped. Oh, actually I forgot something too. Sorry, going selfie style. I gotta hook this ground up. So I'm gonna take that out and re-ground this little setup. And again, I don't know if you need it. It just said if it has it, retain it. Or what it said specifically was if it has it, do not remove it. So we'll listen to that. Anyway, so I'm just gonna pull these wires through, pull this grommet through the hole, hook up my ground, and then I'll hop back on. Okay, more staring down at a distributor. So got that all pulled through. As you can see, this is nice and pulled in. Tried to leave room so that the magnet kind of cap cover thing, hook the ground back up. I'll probably keep that pushed out of the way. But let's throw the cap on. So this is one of the main differences between the gold box style one. Anyway, just fit that down. And then it's real simple. So now we just gotta set that air gap. And they provide this plastic kind of feeler gauge thing. Sorry, I'm trying to do it with one hand in the fight of my life. And it's not a bad idea to save this and throw it in your toolkit, and you basically I like to just put finger pressure. Then I'm gonna tighten these screws, push my ground wire out of the way, and then that part is done, and we can put the rotor back on, put the cap back on. I told you it was easy. Take the rotor, which is super clean. Got your little index spacer in there. Make sure she's seated all the way down. Make sure that both pieces are seated down. Again, our cap looks muy bueno. Make sure your cap is indexed correctly. There's a little tab right there. It's kind of out of focus, but snap your clips back on. And always double check all that kind of stuff. Because you never know, like if you just clip the cap on wrong or just have a lapse of judgment for a second. Okay, so now we're gonna route. I'm gonna kind of route these. I'm gonna go under the vacuum advance. Let me zoom out for a second. You definitely don't want to pull these too tight, and you don't want them to be too loose. So I'll cut about 3 inches off and I'll put the terminals on because we're just gonna come right up the bottom there. Let's do it. Okay, and there's a lot of debate about, you know, the types of terminals that you should use, the type of crimping. Should you solder? Should you shrink tube? And I think there's room for individual preference on that. By the way, I like these wire strippers. My dad used to never use these, but oh dude, it jacked it. So I like to strip those and give it a twist. Give it a twist. Put on your shrink tube. So I like, again, non-insulated terminals. There's a lot of good stuff out there. This should probably be a red, not a blue. You see that blue? It should probably be a red. This is a little bit on the big side, but and I like to crimp like that. It's hard to see, it's out of focus, but so you're not pushing on the seam side. What's most important is that you get a really good pull on it and make sure you get a good firm crimp. Now again, could I go and solder these on? Yes, I could. I personally, if you're just careful about it, don't see a lot of failures. You just are careful and pay attention. You can even two-hand it. As you can see, that's good and strong. Put our shrink tube up. And here's where it's best to not be distracted, which I'm always moderately distracted. Don't overheat your shrink tubing. But look at that. It's a nice factory-ish connection. So now this is the most important part of the whole job. Remember I said mark, like I can see this is the negative terminal, so I'm gonna just run my black wire to the negative. And I think, other than if you have a tachometer, that is the only thing that goes on that terminal. The positive one in our case is a little bit stacked. But it stinks, dude, when you hook this up wrong and you turn the key on for the first time and all you see is a big puff of smoke. Oh my gosh. 140 bucks down the tubes, or 100 bucks, whatever they are. So this is a great upgrade. Man, I'm not over tight, but it's good. This one's a little more full, so I'm a little nervous. If anything, this noise suppressor might go. I'm gonna take the washer off. This is a great, man. Great Sunday afternoon project. You'll find it starts quicker. And I would say like the biggest thing to be, like not difficulty, but thing to be sure that you make sure you have a full 12 volts. If you don't, it just won't, it'll either not start or it'll run terrible. I'm gonna push this under this way. You just don't want these wires to get wrapped up in any belts or anything. Probably could have made them a little shorter. And I guess I'm just gonna start it now. Double check my work, clean off my tools. All right, let's fire it up. I don't know why I'm oddly nervous, but let's just do it. What the heck? All right, man, we did it. Woo! So Pertronix install, you can tackle this yourself, really easy. It takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how you got to run that 12-volt wire. Thanks for watching. Hope this encourages you to do your own projects. Get in the garage. Talk to you later.